Hi all, I'm Jack from Quilting Dreams. Today we start on block number 7 of our quilt along. Today's block is called the Crazy Log Cabin Heart Block. Because the log cabin is a little bit different to the traditional log cabin, but we'll step through that process as we move through this tutorial. We're well over halfway of our quilt along and it's very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the last 4 blocks that we do before we assemble and quilt our quilt. If you would love to share your finished product or your blocks as you go along, or a combination of blocks, please send them through to admin@quiltingdreams.com.au, and I'd love to share that with with everybody else. I'm really looking forward to today's tutorial. I think this is such a fun block to create. So let's get started and let's start this tutorial. Okay, what will we need for this block? We will need to have all our pieces for our log cabin. Well, it's a version of the log cabin. It's definitely not a log cabin. I just used a lot of my scraps and just kept sewing them together to make it work. I wanted to just be a little bit creative, and this is what it ends up turning out like. I'll put the cutting instructions for this in the description, so rather than going through it all now, because it is a little bit different and not quite the traditional log cabin block as we know it. Then in addition to that, you'll need 2 7-inch squares background pieces, and you'll need 4 3.5-inch square background pieces, and then for our border we will need 2 at 13.5 and 2 at 17.5. So we'll just pop those aside for now. Then to make that beautiful heart block, we will need 2. So we will need 2 lots of 7 by 2.5. Here, so it might be a bit hard. Let me just move these out the way. Just pop those out the way for now. Sorry about that. Okay, that's those. It might be a bit easier to see now. So for the top of the block, we'll need 4 at 7 inches by 2.5. So that will create that top section of our block. So whoops, like that. So that will create that top section of the block. Then we have this left over from another block that we did, and I can't recall which one it was, but we've got it left over. So I'm going to use it here, and that's going to be for the side pieces that go next to the log cabin on each side. And you'll need 2 4.5 by 6.5 strips there. So you'll need the 3 strips at 4.5 inches wide. So, you know, if you have scraps and you want to use them, just measure them up. You'll need 3 strips, 4.5 inches wide, and you'll need 2 sets of those. If you've got this piece spare from one of the other blocks and you've still got it spare, then we can just subcut this down to 4.5. Then lastly, what we'll need is pieces for the bottom of the block. Now I'm doing this full, but you can get away with making these much smaller, because we are going to, this is at the bottom of the block, and we are going to put that heart shape. So there's a lot of discarded fabric. So if you want to get creative, you can cut these down much smaller to the width that you need. That's what I did on the sample quilt, is I cut them smaller. It just meant that I had less waste at the end. So that is certainly something you can do if you want to get creative. If you want to do it step by step, the way that we're doing it in the tutorial, then you'll need 2 pieces at 13.5 by 13.5 by 2.5. And then that will create our 4.5 inch once we sew them together. So what are we going to do first? Our first step is we're going to mark up the background pieces so that we've got those ready to go when we need them. So we're going to go diagonal to diagonal. So from one corner to the other, So I just put it in place there using the Frixion pen, and we just draw on that line. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw that on all of our pieces. And that way, when we come to putting this together, it's all prepared and ready to go. I like to do my marking on fabric right at the start, and I just find that it's easier when I'm going through. You can do it just before you need it as well. Both ways work perfectly fine. So let's just pop that one and one more. Okay, so now we've got our background fabric all prepared. So we're going to start work on the log cabin. So for this one here, I've actually placed my ironing mat right next to my sewing machine, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep going around and around and around until we've got all the pieces on. And the reason for that is that I'm just going to be doing a piece, quickly ironing, and then going back to the machine. So what I'm going to do for this one here is I'm going to just pop this in. I'm just going to start doing this particular piece, and I'm just going to show you as I go through where I'm up to. But I'm going to finger press open. So I'll say sew these two together, and then open them up, finger press open, and then I'll do the next piece. So I'll iron intermittently throughout, but I won't be ironing after each one. You can certainly iron after each one. It's, you know, it's what works for you, but I'm just going to iron at intervals throughout. So let's go and let's have a go at putting this crazy log cabin middle block together. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start joining these together. But before we do, I just want to share with you how I've set up my sewing machine. So I'm using the scant 1/4 inch foot. I'm finding that that's working much better for this particular pattern and giving me the opportunity to be able to trim down and make those blocks really square. I've got my foot, my stitch length on 1.3. I had it on 2.5 for some binding that I was doing, so I've just moved that back to 1.3. I'm using the Juke TL2010Q machine. I love this machine. It is an amazing fast machine. I am so thankful that I saw this on a tutorial and have invested in this machine. It's been absolutely wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop these in. So the first two blocks, we're going to take the two squares and we're going to stitch those together. Now at this point, if you've got your iron right next to you, or even if you need to walk, you can iron this open, or you can finger press, whatever works for you. So I have my iron right next to me here, so I can just pop that on there and do that, or I could just finger press. I'm then going to take my next piece and I don't have them in the right order here, so that's a little bit crazy. So we'll see how we go. And we're just going to put those right sides together. Now, if you want to pin end to end and in the middle, you can, but I think this is still small enough that I can get away with just sewing it. And that's the small piece. That one there is now added on. Finger press that open, and we're ready for our next piece. So because I've done this is a crazy log cabin block. It's not traditional in that you would have two of the same length. So I have it, they are all different lengths, which is why I'm popping those cutting instructions into the into the description for you. So you'll see on that last piece I just finger pressed, I didn't go to the iron, but I will now. So I've got these two pieces on, they're looking fabulous. And let's just pop a nice hot iron over that. And that's where we're up to. So I'm just going to keep going around, putting the next one on, which of course I would put the wrong one there. So pop that edge to edge there, just like that. And let's stitch that one down. Now you will find at this stage this block is going to be a little bit too big, but we are going to subcut it down, and that's why I've used the same colour at the top and bottom so I can give that balance there. So I'll just give that a little iron. Now just iron that up. Okay, so what you'll see here is that I've ironed them all out, so to one side. You can certainly do this on this block. If you would like to iron open, you can, but it's no real need to on this block. It sits beautifully just ironed to one side, but if your preference is to iron open, go ahead and make sure that you iron these ones open. Both ways will work just as well. Okay, so that is the middle of our heart all done. So we're going to head back over to the cutting board, ready for our next steps. Okay, so our crazy log cabin currently measures at 6.5 by 7. Now we want it to be 6.5 by 6.5 because that finished size in the block is a 6 by 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim down just a little bit of each of these ends. So where I've used the same color on each end, I'm actually going to trim down slightly. So let's go ahead. So you can see here, if I put it there, we're looking at 7. So we want to take off 1/4 of an inch off each side. So I'm just going to line that up with the lines on the grid, and we're just going to trim off tiny bit at that end and turn that around, and let's trim off a tiny bit at that end, and that will give us our 6.5 by 6.5, so that once we've sewn it in, it'll be 6 by 6. So doesn't that look beautiful? Yes, it is the crazy log cabin block. It's definitely not the traditional log cabin block that you're used to doing. But I think it adds a little bit more character to our quilt, which is really what I'm trying to achieve here, is to give us something different and to add a bit more character. So where to from here? All right, we're going to pop that aside, and we're going to get the top pieces here. So with our top pieces, I'm going to have the red color, hot red pink color at the top, and I'm going to have the lighter one at the bottom. So what we need to do is we need to sew these two together, and we're just going to pop the pin, one in each end, and then one in the middle. This one at this length, we're looking at 7 inches. So it's definitely starting to border on where I would pin. You can, if you want to do this freehand, definitely that you don't have to pin, but I'm going to pin for today. So I'm also going to do the same for this one here. And just so that we can prep the last piece as well, we're going to prep these ones here, and this is for the bottom of our heart. So what we're going to do is right sides together with these ones as well, so that way we can just go to the sewing machine and get all of these sewn up at once. So let's just pop pins at each end. And then one in the middle. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sew both of these lots up. Then I'm going to iron them to one side, and I'm going to come back to you with the next set of instructions. Okay, so what you'll see here is that we've got the bottom piece done, so we're going to pop that aside for now, and we have the two top pieces ready to go. One thing I will share is I actually ironed them in opposite directions. So you don't have to, but I have done that. It just makes it a little bit less bulky. So that is just a hint if you would like to do that. Now we need to get those, we need to grab our 3.5 by 3.5 squares, and we're going to go ahead and put these in the middle. Now this is going to be a pointy block, so you'll notice that they will match very closely at the top there. And we're going to do that to both pieces. Now if you don't want your blocks as pointy, maybe you'd like to think about a 3.25 by 3.25 square. I've got a variety through this quilt because I wanted to do all different ones so that I could just have a bit more character in the quilt, because the quilt does have a lot of different dimensions to it. But if you want to keep them all the same, that's fine. Just go ahead and decide if you want to use 3, 3.25 or 3.5, and you can go ahead and do that. So we're just going to pin these in place now. For all of them, and then we're going to head back to the sewing table. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this now. Okay, at this stage we have sewn on our lines, and we've got that the points of our heart getting well established there. So we can just take these pins out, and then we're going to trim off our excess here. So to trim off the excess, what we want to do is put our 1/4 inch line on our ruler onto our stitch line. And then we're going to just trim off that excess there and pop it to the side. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And we just pop that to the side. Let's just do all of these. Okay. So now at this stage you can go ahead and iron these open. Now when you are ironing them open, so I iron to one side, you need to make sure that the middle part here, one is ironed up and the other one is ironed down. And the reason for that is we want to nest those seams when we join them together. So when you're ironing them, we need to think about that. I'm going to head to the ironing board now and I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is what we should have it looking like at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to join these top two pieces together. So we're going to bring them here. We're going to nest at that intersection there. And this will be quite prominent in our block. So just making sure we do get them nested quite well will certainly be a good outcome. So let's just pop some pins in there so that it makes it nice and square. Yep, perfect. And then we're just going to pop that one ready, so that's ready to go to the sewing machine. Just pop that one aside for now. So what we're going to do is get our pieces to go on either side. Now I'm not sure what I said at the start, but we need two 4-inch pieces here. Now if I did say 4.5, I apologise, but the description will have the correct size in it. So I'm just going to trim off a little bit here just to square this up nicely. Now if you don't have these pre-strips made, you need 2 lots of 4x3 strips. When I say 4, it's 4 inches by 3 strips deep, which will be 6.5. So we need to join 3 together. It's probably the most awkward way of saying it. And we'll just get another one here. And we're going to attach these to the side of our crazy log cabin block. So with that, we're just going to pop right sides together, pin top and bottom and in the middle. And then we're going to head back to the sewing machine. So I will meet you there. Okay, so this is where we're up to. Now it doesn't look much like a heart at the moment, but we're certainly getting there. We're going to now place these together. So we're going to put the right sides together for this top one, and we'll pin at both ends. And then I'll just pop one in the middle. What you'll notice here is I actually ironed the middle of the heart, the top of the heart open. I've just been doing that for this particular block, but you can certainly, if you've ironed to one side, that's not an issue and it will still work beautifully. It's not going to be a problem. And then we're just going to do the same again at the bottom. Now, if you have been creative and you've only cut what you need, just make sure you line it up in the center, so that when we put the side of our heart on, that we're not going to have any issues. So let's head to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch both of these lines, iron them open, and then I'm going to join you back here. Okay, at this stage, this is what our block is going to look like. Now, it's not going to be the right size at this point. So what I need you to do now is we need to trim these block down. So we want it to be 13.5 wide. And then what I do is I actually make it 14 long. The reason I do that, it just gives me a little bit of extra. And then after I've finished my block, I trim off the top. So I'm going to go ahead now and we're going to just trim up, make sure we've got it 13.5 wide. So I'm just going to use the grid lines again and look at where that is. And that is actually pretty good. So just pop that there. And we've got that. You can see there's just a little smidgen to come off. So let's just take that off. Okay, now for the length, we will have way too much, and that's okay. So the first, I'm just going to bring it back one more because I have lines in my mat, and when I cut on those lines, it actually makes it very difficult to do. So I'm going to trim off down here. So I'm starting at the 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to make sure that's 14. That's perfect. And then I'm just going to trim there and take that off. So you'll have a little bit of excess there. That's okay. Not a problem. You can keep that or pop that in the bin. So the next piece here is we're going to put on our hearts. So we're going to pop the first one on. Sorry, we're not putting on our hearts. We're making the heart. We're going to put on our bottom piece to make the heart. So we're going to pop that down into the bottom corner there. Line that up with both sides and pop some pins in both sides. Now we're only going to do one at a time here because we'll trim off, press open, and then put the second one on. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to sew on the marked line. I'm then going to trim 1/4 inch from the marked line and then iron it open. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with you in a moment. Okay, so we now have this piece on, and we're really starting to take shape here with our heart, our crazy log cabin heart block. So we're now going to add on our other corner, and this is really going to give us the last piece to make that heart look absolutely stunning. So we're just going to pin down in the corner there and pin in this corner. So we're going to go ahead and repeat exactly what we did for our first one. Stitch down the line, trim off the excess, and then iron it open. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to meet you back here and we're going to pop the borders on. Okay, so at this stage we have our heart block complete. We just need to put the borders on, but before we do that we want to make sure that this heart block measures at 13.5 by 13.5. So I'm going to go ahead now and just check. I don't want to take anything off the bottom, so we want to just check that the top, and we know because we trimmed it down to 14, so we definitely know that we're going to have something to take off here. And this is where I take that extra 1/2 inch off after I've sewn it together. And we're just going to whip that one down there, and that gives us our 13.5 by 13.5 because we checked the sides just before we put this on. So that's where we'll just take that extra 1/2 inch off the top. and that will give us a beautiful 13.5 by 13.5. And doesn't this look beautiful? I love this crazy log cabin integration into the heart. I think it looks really quite sweet. So the next step for us is to pop the borders on. So we're going to go ahead and put all the borders on. Now we've done this a few times before, so firstly we're going to put our side borders on, and using our pinning technique that we do, one at each end. And one in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to pop all the borders on, and I'm going to come back to you and show you the finished block. And just like that, we've finished block number 7 today. What a great tutorial. I've really enjoyed doing this one today. I enjoy doing something that's a little bit different. So the crazy log cabin heart is now complete, and that's block number 7. So we have 4 blocks left to go in this quilt along, and I'm really excited to bring the next couple of blocks to you as we do something that's a little bit different in the center part of those hearts. If you've enjoyed today's tutorial, please select the like button. If you'd like to see more of my content, then please subscribe and you'll be notified when new content is available. I love creating this content with you. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Have a lovely day. Keep crafting. Thank you very much. Bye.